What up, Gallo? Just wait for everyone to pop on here for Bordeaux for breakfast. Although it's 3:30 on the East Coast, but it's 12:30 on the West Coast. So maybe you are having a late breakfast with some Bordeaux. Hey, Tom. We'll let everybody kind of pop on. Phélan Ségur just came on, which is awesome. So they are the main event today. So yeah, I'm going to bring them on in about 2-3 minutes. So hey everybody, thank you for joining us today. Sunday brunch, 3:30. We're just waiting for a couple more people to hop on, but we are doing Bordeaux for breakfast, Sunday brunch. I look forward to these every single week. I posted today about just like the things I really miss about being home in the city and the way New York was, and every Sunday, more or less, was a big day to just get together with all of your friends, go to the West Village, East Village, Brooklyn, wherever, and just have a really fun brunch. It's just kind of a way to wind down after the previous work week, but then kind of get ready for the work week ahead and kind of get rid of the Sunday scaries a little bit. I don't know if that word Sunday scaries translates where all you guys are from, but it just basically means the bit of anxiety you get before you dive into a work week. So Sunday brunch with your friends kind of mitigates those feelings of anxiety. So thank you all for popping on today. Today is really, really exciting because not only are we having Bordeaux for breakfast, but we are going to be talking to a female director. She is the co-director for a legendary chateau in Saint-Estèphe called Phélan Ségur, if you are not familiar. I will let Véronique speak more about Phélan Ségur's history, but it's important to paint a picture of where we are on a map. So we are in Bordeaux, and we are on the left bank, left of the Gironde River. We are just south of the Médoc, and we are just north of Pauillac. Hey Gina, hey everybody popping on. Thank you so much for popping in. So usually here the soils are a little bit more gravelly, being perfect to cultivate Cabernet Sauvignon, because Cabernet loves hot, gravelly soils in order to fully ripen in a place that has a maritime climate, that has a lot of cloud cover, but then again is still kind of moderated. The temperatures are still kind of moderated throughout the year because of that maritime climate. So what we're seeing a little bit more is some of the estates there, they are starting to plant a little bit more Merlot, which we're going to talk to Véronique about because I think it's a fun point to bring up. And the reason why more producers are doing this is to make a little bit more of an approachable style of Bordeaux, something that you could pop open a little bit earlier. Historically with Bordeaux, they say, you have to hold on to these wines for 20, 30 years or it's not worth opening. So now we see the addition of Merlot to kind of soften things up a little bit, but we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. So since En Premiere Week didn't get to happen, which is, I don't know if you guys are familiar with En Premiere, but En Premiere is when basically the 2019 vintage is still in barrel and people of the trade can come and kind of pre-order it. So they can sample it from the barrel before it even gets bottled, and they can decide how much they want to buy. It's basically a preview of the newest vintage. So because that didn't get to happen this year, I really want to talk to her about that. I want her to talk to us all things about 2019 and what we can expect from that, because I think that is really exciting. In Bordeaux, vintage makes a huge difference because you have different levels of rain and cloud cover and frost and etc. So vintage is really, really important when you are speaking about Bordeaux. So let's bring on Véronique because I want to dive right into this, and it's really late where she is. It's like 9:30 at night, so I really appreciate her popping on with us now. And so let's bring her on. We are connecting. Bonsoir!
Bonsoir, Nicole.
That's my favorite word to say in French, by the way.
Ouais, not bad.
Thank you. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you so much for joining us today. Especially it's definitely a little bit later your time, so I really appreciate it.
That's fine. I'm so happy to participate. I mean, what a great idea to join a brunch time. Usually
Yeah,
at that time, I'm more having like a herbal tea, like mint from the garden and verbena. But it's great to enjoy a glass of Phélan Ségur.
I love it. It's perfect. So can you give us a brief history about the chateau and kind of how you came into this fabulous role?
The chateau is a typical Bordeaux chateau from the Médoc. So we were born like in the early 19th century, and we were created by an Irish guy called Bernard Phelan. Because when you say Phélan Ségur, and actually you pronounce it perfectly well, it sounds very French, and especially you have on the bottle you have an accent. I know that we don't see it, but you have an accent on the E right there, so it looks very, very French. But
Yes.
at the beginning, it was Irish, so there was no accent.
Oh, that's super interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It must have been the French administration or something, or someone who added this accent. But it's Irish, and we remained in the Irish family, the Phelan family, for over 100 years until the beginning of the 20th century. And so we have always been a family-owned chateau, actually. And then we moved from one family to another, and we were for almost 50 years in the hands of a very famous Bordeaux family called Delon. And Delon, for us, it's the family who owns Léoville-las-Cases in Saint-Julien, beautiful estate. And they sold the Phélan Ségur in 85 to another very famous French family called Gardinier. And the Gardinier, some people may know them in the US. First of all, because one of the three brothers lives in Florida, and he runs orange groves. And because the two other brothers run in France beautiful relais et chateaux, hotels and luxury restaurants. And one is famous in the States, and it's called Le Taillevent. It's one of the, it used to be a 3 Michelin star restaurant, and it's one of these flagships in the French gastronomy. And for the last 2 years, we are in the hands of another family now. It's a Belgian family. The man is called Philippe Vandevivre. He's a absolutely great Bordeaux lover, connoisseur. Is quite amazing. He lives in Belgium. He lives in the Flemish part of Belgium. And I'm telling you something, even if we are changing families every 2 or 3 generations, it makes a whole difference to be able to talk to somebody, to talk to someone who has a vision. For example, Philippe Vandevivre has a younger son who is 5 years old, and we know that everything we do at the property is for his son. So we have in front of us, we have a future of 20 years, which is great.
That's great. And you do see more and more these days chateau and different wineries being owned by these big umbrella companies that own, many other things all under one other name. So it is really, really great to kind of see that transition just from family to family. I think.
Yeah. On the other hand, sometimes these big institutional investors, they bring a lot of money. They bring also a lot of energy to Bordeaux, and that's also a good way. It's not my way, but it's another good way.
Absolutely. So talk to us about your role and how you got into wine and how you started and all of that.
So to make a long story short, but it's a funny story, totally by chance, my first job was in Napa.
In Napa?
It was the first time I was leaving France, and I got a job thanks to just unbelievable French gentleman called Bernard Portet, and he used to run a winery in Napa on Silverado Trail called Clos Duval.
Very familiar.
And because of the connection with this French guy, I got the job, and I stayed there for almost 3 years, and I didn't know anything about wine. I couldn't speak English. I was under 21, so he was hiding me. He didn't want to see me in the tasting room. So that was very funny. I learned a lot, and that was great because at that time, well, now I think that Napa has a bit changed, but at that time there was a great American spirit, what we French people enjoy so much about the US, and we are talking about the mid 80s. So there was a sense of freedom, of adventure. You could create things. That was wonderful. So I learned a lot. But my father then said, you have to come back to France. So I came back to France.
Your time is up here.
And so when I came back to France, I worked for a gentleman who had some vineyards in south of France, and who actually was the owner for another great winery in Napa called Saint-Supéry. Saint-Supéry now it belongs to the Chanel family, but he owned it for a long time. And the lady who was running that winery was called Michaela Rodino, and she was a great lady. So I went to work in south of France, in the Languedoc, for that gentleman called Robert Scali, and we created a brand of vin de Pays d'Oc, varietal concept, which was totally new back then in France. Nobody knew about Chardonnay, Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, because we are a terroir vineyard. We are not a varietal vineyard in France. And so we created a brand called Fortin de France. And at that time, it was a very big success because it was French, it was approachable, it was affordable, everything went well. And then suddenly all the new world wines from Chile, Argentina, Australia, they entered the American market and the international market. And since they don't have the same strict regulations as we have in terms of viticulture, they did better. And I think they had a better sense of marketing at that time. So I worked for him then, and then, which is the great story of my life, I went to work in Champagne.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, for 12 years, almost 12 years, in a very interesting, for a very interesting champagne brand called Nicolas Feuillette.
Yep.
And that was a great adventure, especially in the US, where we really at that time built the company, the brand. And then totally by chance, I wanted to leave the wine industry. I wanted to do something totally different. And I met with Mr. Gardinier, who was the former owner of Phélan Ségur. And it was like love at first sight.
Yeah.
I was not looking for a job, and he offered me the job as a general manager, or director, as we say in French. And the role is to, like a chef d'orchestre, as we say in French. So the role is to bring this beautiful wine to even further, respecting the people who work there and respecting the terroir.
Always.
So that's what it is.
Cheers to that. Can you tell us how many hectares are you guys working with, and a little bit about the grapes grown? Because we are taught so often that, you know, left bank Cabernet, you know, it's we're told over and over again Cabernet, but it's more than that, right?
It's much more than that. We run 170 acres of vineyards, which means that we are taking care of approximately 600,000 vines. 600,000 vines. We in Bordeaux, and especially on the left bank, have great, bigger estates, which is something which is very interesting, because we have so many different terroirs. And I have around me approximately 30 people to run this vineyard. The terroir and the grapes, because it starts with the terroir. You were perfectly well explaining earlier that we have these beautiful gravels. A gravel is like a big stone, okay, on the left bank, and I think that it's maybe the most beautiful terroir for Cabernet Sauvignon in the world.
Yeah,
I really think it. It's exactly what Exactly. It's exactly what Cabernet Sauvignon likes. Well-drained soils, getting warmer, not too much organic material, incredible, perfect terroir for Cabernet Sauvignon. But there are not only gravels, there are also some other elements that were brought, once again, from the Pyrenees a long time ago, that are smaller elements. And the finest element is clay. So we have a lot of gravels, we have sand, and we have clay. And especially where we are in Saint-Estèphe, you were explaining that Saint-Estèphe is in the north of the Médoc, just north of Pauillac, approximately, must be like 40 miles north of Bordeaux. We have this clay. And this clay is something which is very different from the rest of the terroir of the Médoc, which is really the temple of Cabernet Sauvignon. And thanks to the clay, which has the specificity of retaining water, we can plant some Merlot. Because also clay, because of the water that it has, is a soil that is not going to warm up as fast as the gravels. So Cabernet Sauvignon is a late ripening grape. So you want to plant your Cabernet Sauvignon on a very well drained soil, on a soil that is going to warm up faster. Merlot is a fast ripening grape. So Merlot doesn't mind having some heavier soil. And Merlot has to be restrained a little bit by a soil that is a bit cooler, because it ripens faster. So we have this quite amazing Merlot. It has nothing to do with the Merlot that you can find on the right bank.
It's totally different.
Very different. It's Merlot with a lot of tannins, a lot of structure. Maybe they are not as round and mellow as the ones you can find in Pomerol or in Saint-Emilion, but it's very different Merlot. And we also have some Cabernet Franc, which is always a little bit flowery and delicate and add complexity. And we planted for the first time Petit Verdot, but they are still very young, so they are not. It's too early to talk about the result of the Petit Verdot, but it's a very interesting grape.
That's very interesting, and people will plant that in the Bordeaux to add some more tannin, some more color and structure.
Petit Verdot, it's always very spicy. Petit Verdot is a very tricky varietal to grow, because it's like not a bush, but it's very difficult to really train.
The wild child.
Exactly. And the guys in the vineyards, when I told them that we were going to plant some Petit Verdot, they said, no Petit Verdot, no, it's too difficult to manage. And then Petit Verdot, it doesn't ripe every year. So it's not an easy grape, but it brings Petit Verdot is always very juicy, spicy. It's interesting. And in Saint-Estèphe, when it does well, it's just gorgeous. And in Saint-Estèphe, to go back to Merlot, because nobody knows that, because we always think Médoc, Cabernet Sauvignon.
Right, exactly.
Exactly. We have up to approximately, I think it's more than 50% of the grapes in Saint-Estèphe are Merlot.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't think people realize that.
No. It doesn't mean that we are, but Nicole, it doesn't mean that we are using 50% of Merlot in our Grand Vin. Sometimes the Merlot will go to the second wine, for example. Right. But we have a lot of Merlot. And sometimes, even if the trend is to go to Cabernet Sauvignon, because everybody says that on the left bank, Cabernet Sauvignon is very noble. When you don't have the terroir, you don't have the terroir. I mean, you rather plant a very good Merlot on a Merlot terroir rather than planting a Cabernet Sauvignon on a Merlot terroir, and it's going to be something very average.
Absolutely. Someone actually just asked if you have had any problems so far this year with frost.
No, no.
Good.
There were only a few nights, only 2 nights of risk this year so far. But we in Saint-Estèphe and especially with Phélan Ségur, we are very close to the river. You were mentioning about the oceanic climate because we are close to the Atlantic Ocean.
Right.
But in the north, I don't know. I'm not sure that you would see it. I don't know if you would. Somebody's going to see anything there. I'm going to try.
Give it a try. I can see. We can see.
Yeah. So you see that's the Atlantic Ocean right there.
Right.
Okay. And that's the river. That's the Gironde River. So that's the left bank. That's the right bank. And that's actually the Gironde River is the combination of two rivers. And you can see that where we are, because we are here, the river becomes very, very wide. And it's like it's like how do you call that? When it controls the temperature, it's like a cooler system, a cooling system.
Yeah, moderates things.
Exactly. When it's hot, the temperature goes down. When it's cold, the temperature is always by only a few Celsius degrees, but still, it does work. So when we had some very big frost in, when was it, in 91, which was the very, very, very severe frost in Bordeaux, Phélan Ségur did not get any frost because the vineyards are facing the river.
Got it.
And so 91, no frost. And the other year where we had a lot of frost in Bordeaux, and that was just awful. And it was on the 22nd of April of 2017.
Okay.
And the same story, no frost.
Wow, that's incredible.
So I'm a little bit relaxed about frost. What is getting very, very dangerous is hail.
Hail.
Because like last week we had, so it's very stormy right now. It's too hot for a month of April because I think we have approximately like 80 degrees, which is too hot. But the vineyard, it's very hot. The vineyard is at least 2 to 3 weeks in advance. So there are some big storms, and a part of Bordeaux, especially Saint-Emilion, was very, very badly hit by the hail. But and that's you cannot really do anything.
You can't. I mean, and so basically, for those who don't know, when the hailstorm comes, it actually can split the berries, right? And so you lose the crop.
We had hail on the 1st of September at Phélan Ségur and in Saint-Estèphe, 1st of September 2011, and it destroys. I mean, it depends of the strength, but it can destroy the wood.
The actual trunk.
When it impacts the wood of the vine. I mean, it's the sap cannot go normally into the vine, and it really, really is bad, and it can not. You lose the crop of this year, but it endangers the crop of the following year.
Oof.
So it's very disaster. You can lose then the fruit, or if you don't really doesn't destroy the leaves, the fruit, you still have some impacts on the berries, especially when it's close to the harvest, and then you fear all the problems like picuracetic, or you fear like to have botrytis.
Yep.
So it's like being a farmer, you know.
Exactly.
Mother Nature is always more powerful than we are.
Absolutely, and there's really nothing you can do, but it's just about how you make the best of it and react to it, really. But I'm glad that you guys haven't had to deal with as much. You don't have to deal with frost as much, so that's great. I feel awful. You guys didn't get to have your en premiere, which is always a big time for everybody in Bordeaux. So why don't we talk about 2019? So what can everyone expect from this vintage? We'd love to learn a little bit more.
We had in 2019 a very interesting year for Saint-Estèphe. As I was mentioning, we have these gravels and this clay, And when it's very, very hot during the summer, and that's what happened, we didn't have very hot weather during the whole month of August, but we had like heat waves. And it works for us because we had a wet spring, so all the clay, you know, swallowed the water,
right.
And then when it became, you know, a little bit critical by the end of the month of August, it was not critical for us because of the fact that we are blessed by this clay, and the clay releases the water. So we had perfect conditions for Saint-Estèphe. So which means that we had enough water, not too much. That's, you know, that's always
right.
the big balance.
Yep.
We need to have enough water so that all the photosynthesis, you know, keeps going on, but you don't want too much water. And that's exactly what happened. And usually when you know, we try to escape the vineyard for a couple of weeks during the month of August, so we always come back at the same time. And so that's the first picture of the vineyard you have is like, oh my God, what am I going to see? You know, and I remember very clearly when I came back, the first vision of the vineyard was like, oh my God, it looks like heaven. Yes. Because you could see that the grapes were beautiful, very ripe, very sound, and the leaves were green, but not, you know, a tired green. Sometimes in the month of late August, early September, you tend to see already some yellow leaves, and you know, the leaves are like palm tree leaves, you know, like that, you know, instead of being, and that was not the case. So the vineyard worked very well. I mean, all the photosynthesis and the maturation worked very, very, very well. And we started harvesting on the I don't know, like the third week of September. I don't remember exactly, until mid-October. So and it was so easy.
That's amazing.
And because the grapes were so sound, and we know that we didn't have any risk of botrytis, and we just had to go where we wanted to go. So we were, you know, every morning we go into the vineyards and we taste the berries, because that's how we decide, you know, by looking at how the vineyard looks like, and tasting the berries and the skins to see if the tannins are ripe, look at the seeds to see if they are getting brown, and so on and so forth. And we just had to decide where to go without any strategy in terms of risks. And that was like, it was lovely. So comfortable.
Yes. I mean, I know it's funny that first of all, you painted a beautiful picture. I really wish I was there in that moment right now. But I know what you mean about August holidays and stuff. I actually work for an Italian company. So the factory in Italy shuts down for the month of August. So I always take my holiday in August. And so I know that, you know, I'm one of those annoying Americans that is in your town when you're all, you know, on holiday. But I know that feeling of just coming back to work after that is over, and you're not quite sure what's going to be on your plate, if it's going to be disastrous or if it's going to be wonderful. So that is such a great feeling to come back into the vineyard and everything is just perfectly sound and gorgeous.
But you know, that was, Nicole, that was like, I couldn't stop walking the vineyard. That was like, you know, because the feeling was so harmonious.
Yes.
And that's, and you thank the nature for providing this kind of feeling and moments. And you are almost like the vineyard. You are the vineyard.
Right.
And it's so, the feeling was so warm and so, it's something very magical. It was a feeling that I don't have every year.
Right.
So the good thing is that the berries were absolutely bright. The only thing that we really took care of were the degrees of alcohol. Because this, I mean, you know, degrees tend to go higher and higher every year. And especially on the Merlot this year, the Merlot, we were, because you know you have more alcohol, I mean a higher alcohol level in the Merlot, and we in Bordeaux, and especially at Phélan Ségur, we are really looking for the balance. And so if you harvest too high alcohol Merlot, it's not good. You want to keep the freshness. So we harvested Merlot a little bit early, even if it was the third week of September. We might maybe have waited a little bit more, but we were fearing so much this high potential alcohol. And that's the only thing. But that's very interesting, because we have a very, even if it's going to be like 14.5% alcohol on the final blend, which is for us the highest level of alcohol ever. Highest.
Wow.
Yeah, the wines, when we started tasting the different lots, we have you know, we start doing the blending in January, February. You know, we have each lot, which is each vat, and we have like 100 glasses in front of us. You know, we have Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, but we do it blind, because if you know where it comes from, the plot, you think this is going to be good, this is going to be better.
You have preconceived notions of what to expect.
Exactly. So we do it, we do it blind. And I remember very well writing freshness. So that's a 19 is a kind of combination of something which is very ripe, very structured, because our wines in Saint-Estèphe are big and have this high quantity of tannins, but the tannins are very ripe now. So it's structure, it's dense, it has a lot of tannins and some alcohol also. It's ripe, but it keeps the freshness. Compared to 18 is more is richer, maybe. Doesn't have the same freshness. And it's going to be, Nicole, if you know Bordeaux a little bit, it's going to be a little bit like the comparison between 2009 and 2010 in Bordeaux. Two just marvelous vintages, but with the two different approaches. 9 being rich, sexy, solar, incredibly juicy, a little bit wild, and 10 being more precise, maybe more balanced, more what we call classic in Bordeaux, maybe classic, a little bit more classic. And it's the same thing. 19 has the structure, the precision. 18 is a little bit more wild.
Right. That's interesting. I love that. I love that. You know, every year it's a different. It's never going to be the same thing, and that's another reason why I love wine, because it's always going to take us somewhere different. It's going to give us a different experience every time. And so, actually, currently, right now, I am drinking the 2016 vintage, which is available along with. There's many other vintages that people, if you guys out there are interested. This is the 16, but there's also the 08, the 10, and then 12 through 15 available. So I should probably be holding this maybe, but you know what? It is drinking super fresh, vibrant, concentrated, structured, red berries, deep red berry. It is absolutely stunning. And I know it's super early, but I Coravin it. So, but I might drink the rest of it with our burgers later tonight. But I'm reading everywhere that 2016 was an amazing vintage as well for Saint-Estèphe. So can you talk to us about this wine here and a little bit about the blend and the winemaking?
I think that 16. Well, first of all, I think for us, drinking 16 is something which is very unusual, because you know we wait a little bit longer. But,
super young.
But 16 to me is maybe the best vintage we made. I shouldn't say we ever made, but you know, without even tasting the 16, when I talk about 16, I almost feel it in my body.
Yeah.
Because 16, I hate to use the word perfection in wine, because I think that perfection is really rational. And we are not talking about rationality. We are talking about emotion.
Yes.
And 16 for me is the perfect definition of harmony, because you have everything in 16.
I feel
16,
that.
16 is a blend of 55% Cabernet Sauvignon, 45% Merlot. So you, first of all, you almost have this balance.
Mm-hmm.
16 has this quality of tannins that we like so much, because sometimes people, you know, when they hear tannins, they get afraid. And they shouldn't be afraid of tannins. Tannins, what makes our wine, what make our wines, especially in Bordeaux, so structured, so powerful, and they age very well thanks to the tannins. Yep. So they are really the backbones of our wines. But in the 16, these tannins are so velvety, incredibly present without being aggressive. And it's ripe without being overripe. It's fresh without being aggressive. It's dense, but with a perfectly balanced level of density. It's long. It doesn't stop. It's just an amazing wine. And in terms of aromas, I remember it's almost, I can almost feel it now in my body, because I remember perfectly well when we were vinifying it, like how the berries were tasting, and right away when we started the fermentation, you know, even by tasting at the vat, you could see you could taste the depth of the juice, because it was not even wine, and the berries, and it was ripe berries, like we had black fruit, like how do you call a blackberry that works well, like blackberries, and plenty of this, and cherry. So it was not overripe fruit, you know, but the quality of the fruit was just amazing. And just at the tank, just by tasting the wines at the tank, we knew that it was going to be something incredible.
This is so special. And actually, you know, I know I had to open it, you know, for our chat, but I'm actually going to go and order a bunch more and just sit on them and put them
exactly
in because this has the structure, like you said, in the concentration to just go on for years. It is so beautiful and fresh. So what is happening in the vineyard right now? What are the vines doing? And has this quarantine mess affected the work that you've had out in the vineyard?
Yes, very much so, in terms of organization, because we have to take care about 500 or 600,000 vines, but we have to take care about 30 people. And I must say that when on the 17th of March, quarantine was decided, there was a kind of a panic, because nobody really knew. And so at the beginning, especially in the vineyards, we have 2 or 3 vignerons, as we say, workers, who have some heart problems, and one has some asthma.
So some underlying conditions.
Yeah. And so they said, it's too dangerous for us, so we are going to go back and stay at home. And I said, fine, that's perfectly normal. I mean, if you don't feel it, don't do it.
Right.
So, and we lost like 3-4 people in the vineyard for 2 weeks, and 2 people in the cellars for 2 weeks. One has to take care of his children, because you know that the children don't go to school.
From school, yeah.
So at the beginning, I mean, we were a bit worried, because we didn't know exactly what was going on. We thought at one point we thought that we feared that we would not even be able to go into the companies, into the winery. And that was a little bit scary, because at that time we had the 2018 vintage in the barrels. And it has spent already a year and a half in the barrels. And we were saying, oh my God, if we cannot enter the chateau any longer,
Yeah.
for how much time are we going to let the 2018 on the in the barrels for
sit there, right?
Yeah, it was very, very scary. So we decided to hurry up a little bit and to empty the barrels and send the wine to the back to the vats to prepare the bottling. So now they are being clarified, and we ordered all the bottles, all the corks, because so if you see the chateau, if you could see the chateau now, it's like mountains of bottles, empty bottles, because we were fearing about. We didn't know if we would have trucks, bringing the raw material. We didn't know anything.
We didn't know what was going to happen. Yeah.
So everything is ready for the bottling, which gonna now eventually I think happen in June. So, and at the same time in the cellar, missing 2 people, we were also racking the first racking of the 2019.
Wow.
So emptying the barrels, cleaning the barrels, and putting the wines back into the barrels. And we are using a very traditional method at Phélan, which is called the soutirage à l'esquive, to see if the wines that we are emptying from the barrels are clean.
Mm-hmm.
We are using, the candle. So we take the glass like that, and we put the candle behind the glass, and if it's not blurred, it's okay. As soon as we have a little bit of lees in the glass,
mm-hmm.
we stop the racking. So it takes a lot of time, but it's very smooth and soft for the wine. It's very precise, so it's worth it. So very busy in the cellars.
Extremely.
And in the vineyards. That was crazy because it's exactly when everything starts.
Right.
We were on that week of the 17th of March. We had to place, the small pheromones capsules
mm-hmm.
On the wires every 4 rows, and so that it really helps us avoiding using insecticides. They have to be put almost, within 4 or 5 days.
Right.
So we asked for some help. Actually, at Phélan Ségur, we are lucky enough, we have a chef. And because we always receive a lot of people, and mm-hmm. So the chef, he was jobless because we don't receive anybody at the chateau right now. So the chef and the gouvernante, they want to help the guys in the vineyards.
Oh wow!
And they are still doing it, actually, either in the vineyards or because and it creates like a big collaboration, and that's good.
Yes.
So we had to put the capsules of pheromones. We had to, bring the higher wires
mm-hmm.
down so that the vines can grow in between them. And then within a few weeks, we will take them up again. But it's kilometers and kilometers of wires.
It's funny because our friend Jeff Harding, I've been watching all of his lives, and I saw you on his, and one of the things that he always says to everyone he speaks to is that the vines don't stop. So when the rest of the world has stopped, those vines are not stopping. Nature goes on.
But that's why for us it's a quarantine, which is not so difficult, because when we are in the vineyards, life goes on.
Yeah.
And that's where you feel the power of the nature of life. So nothing is really different. It's much more quiet.
Mm-hmm.
You have to organize the team in different way. They are never together. But now they have, things to wash their hands and everything. So they are very relaxed.
Mm-hmm.
There is less cars. There are less cars. And so you feel you have a better sense of the smells, like when was it? Last week it rained, and in the morning I was walking in the vineyards.
Mm-hmm.
You could smell the earth. You could literally smell the earth, which is not as easy when you have a lot of traffic or like all the trucks. It's totally different. You hear the birds singing. and there are more birds than ever.
It's
It's
true. It's
totally
almost
different
like,
atmosphere.
you know, it's almost like we as humans in the industrial world and what we've done to our, it's almost like we've been choking our planet for so long and it kind of got this release, you know,
Exactly,
and it's
exactly.
we're it's almost like it's coming back to life and we're creating this beautiful harmony now. So when you go, I'm actually down in North Carolina right now at my father-in-law's summer home just to escape New York. We came here a month ago and we're in the mountains. I'm completely surrounded by nature and I have never felt so harmoniously connected to all of the greenery, to the birds, to everything as I've never felt this connection before until now.
And I must say that I'm a little bit fearing the release, because we're supposed to be released on the 11th of May. And already we can, when I drive to Saint-Estèphe in the morning, I can see that there is more and more traffic. It's getting heavier and
Get in
heavier.
there.
So I don't know what's gonna happen, but
Hopefully we can
and
that.
it's and we keep very busy. We are very busy still in the vineyard, because now, since the temperature are high and the grass is really growing very fast, we don't use any herbicides. So we do either we work the soil to get rid of the grass, or we mow
Yep,
mow
Mo.
the,
Yep.
we mow the grass when we keep grass in between the rows. When the vigor of the vine is a bit too high, we keep the grass.
Yep.
So we do that.
Yep.
I mean, and we've started treating the vineyards also, because especially with that kind of wet and mild temperatures, I mean, it's perfect for mildew and oidium, and we want to fight against mildew and oidium.
Absolutely.
So we started treating the vineyards, and it takes some time, and not everybody can do it. Not everybody can go onto a tractor, because in Bordeaux and in the Médoc, the rows are very narrow, because we have a very high density vineyard, meaning that we have 10,000 vines per hectare.
Oh, wow, very, very
So
good.
when you have a tractor, I mean, it's not such an easy thing that to enter the rows, and to at the same time you're driving your tractor, you have to check if what you're doing is being well done. So it takes us something like 2 to 3 years to train a tractor driver.
Wow.
So
I had no idea. Somebody asked, is there any vendage green harvest planned?
Alors, I cannot say, because it's too early, because now we have the grapes. They are, if there are any, they are that big, you know,
So
they have not flowered yet.
okay.
So we are actually it's because Cabernet Sauvignon comes a little bit later, but we are going to be counting the grapes, which are they are baby grapes, and they have not flowered yet. It's like a very tight small grape.